So tonight what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going over chapter 12. So this is, again, basically my summary of chapter 12, where we're going to be going over leases, okay, and leasehold estates, or less than freehold estates. Okay, so we're going to be going over what you need to know as far as that is concerned, as far as those topics, what they are, what the story is, and also I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the questions that I think that I've seen on the test, some things I've seen also in when it comes to the general practice of real estate as far as the leases are concerned. So we'll go over a couple of those things that I've been seeing on the test. So the first thing is we're going to classify how you might see this interest in real estate. That's what they'll refer to it as. So basically what happens is we're positioning it right next to our freehold estates. Okay, we're positioning it right next to our freehold estates. So freehold estates are ownership, right? So what happens is this: in a freehold estate, we have the full bundle of rights, right? So you have the right to possess, use, transfer, exclude, and encumber. Now, in a less than freehold or leasehold interest, okay, what you have when you have that is the right to possess and use the property, okay? So they sometimes refer to this as a interest in real property that is finite, okay, because it has an end, okay? I don't necessarily like that, because there are some less than freehold estates that we'll see that do not have definitive ends. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the four different types of less than freehold estates. The first one is an estate for years. Now, everyone always gets this confused. Because of the word 4 years. So what this is, it has a definite time period. Now, they might refer to this also as a tenancy for years. They might refer to it as a lease for years. What that means is it has a definitive time period. It will start and it will end. It will start and it will end. So what that basically means is we know how long it's going to be. Now, listen to what I'm going to tell you. It could be a weekend lease. It could be a 6-month lease. It could be a 2-month lease. It could be any of those things. It could be a year-long lease that you pay for monthly. Okay, that's a very common lease type, where you're going to have an annual lease. That's what maybe you'd refer to it as. And what happens is you're going to pay for monthly. It is an estate for years. When you go to the Jersey Shore, you go on vacation somewhere and you rent a condominium for a week, that is an estate for years. If we know when it ends, it is an estate for years. Okay, that is super important. So, any questions on that? Anybody from the Peanut Gallery who's watching along with me live? Nope. Okie dokie. So the next one is going to be the periodic tenancy, or sometimes referred to as an estate from period to period. So what happens is this one auto renews into itself. What do I mean by that? This is typically a month-to-month lease. Month to month. It could be week to week. It could be year to year, as long as it auto renews for whatever period of time it is. If it auto renews for let's say if it auto renews for a month, something like that, that would be a situation where it would just renew for that month. It would renew for just another month. It just goes from one period to another period to another period to another period. Okay. And someone asked in the chat, which part of the book is this? Chapter 12, what unit? Now, The book has changed, and I think they don't refer to the chapters as chapters anymore. They refer to it as units. Unit 12, same thing. So they just switch out the word chapter for unit. So it's the same difference. Okay. So that is a good excuse me. That is a good question though, because I know in some of the newer editions of the book that I'm teaching out of, they have done that. So that is something that I would say definitely just be aware of. When I say chapter, it's the same thing as unit. So unit 12 we're teaching from today. So back to periodic tenancy. Again, it auto renews into itself. So one of the characteristics that it doesn't have is it doesn't have an end date. Now, I will tell you this, each state is different in regards to how they how long a notice you need to cancel a periodic tenancy. In the state of New Jersey, that period would be one period of time. So if it goes from year to year, auto renews into itself, you would have to give 1 year notice. If it's a month to month lease, you would have to give 30 days notice. That is the situation there. And it could be on either part, either the lessor or the lessee. So let me ask the question, who is the lessor and who is the lessee? Who's the lessor and who's the lessee? So the lessor, remember this, OR gives, EE receives, okay? And I'll put that up here. OR gives, okay? EE receives. So when we're talking about this situation is the lessor is giving the leasehold interest. The lessor is the landlord or the freehold estate owner, okay? The lessee is the tenant or the one who has the right to possess and use the property, right? The one who has the right to possess and use it. Because when you have a less than freehold or leasehold estate, you have the right to possess and use it. So the one who has that right is the is exactly that, is the lessee. The tenant has the right to possess and use it. So if there's any other questions, let me know as we're moving along. It's because we have two other less than freehold estates. And then what I'm going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about what needs to be in writing and where there's some confusion with some of these. So let's get through our next two. The next one is usually pretty easy. It's an estate at sufferance. There is no period of time, and tenant is staying without permission of the landlord / lessor. So what happens is this is usually a holdover tenancy in which the landlord says, hey, I want you out. And the tenant goes, nay, nay, I am not leaving. That is an estate at sufferance. That is an estate at sufferance right there. Okay. And how I remember it is the landlord is suffering. The landlord is suffering. So that is the situation in regards to an estate at sufferance. Now, the next one, people always get confused. An estate at will. This is basically an estate at sufferance with permission. Okay. So what happens is this. It's a situation where, let me explain it. It's a situation where the landlord, okay, basically is allowing the tenant to stay with no definitive time period. Because here's the thing. If there was a definitive time period, it would be an estate for years. Like if the landlord said, okay, you could stay till, the end of July. That is a definitive time period. We have an estate for years. Now, if there was no time period, but the tenant was paying on a regular basis, like there was a period established, then that would be a periodic tenancy. Like let's say at the beginning of every month, you pay for a 30-day period. Well, that's a periodic tenancy. That's a tenancy that it could cancel at any time with one period notice in New Jersey. And what happens is you have the rights that any tenant would have in a periodic tenancy. It's not an estate at will. An estate at will typically happens like this. Let's say the lease ended July 1st. July 1st, the lease ended. And right before the lease ended, I went to the landlord and I said, hey, Mr. Landlord, I would like to stay in the unit. I'm closing on my home. I don't know when I'm going to be closing. Could you let me stay? And they say, sure, stay as long as you want. As long as you want. That, and you could just let me know when you're going to leave. That's an estate at will. Stay as long as you want. No, it doesn't say, hey, give me rent. Because if he said, hey, look, give me rent at the end of the month, just like we were doing, well, that's a periodic tenancy now. But if he says stay as long as you want, don't worry about it, not a problem, that's an estate at will. Okay. So question came in and said estate at sufferance will happen with the court order. Are you asking what will happen with the court order, or is this something that I'm not truly following the question to fully flush it out? So give me a little bit of a better question, and I'd be more than happy to answer it for you. Because an estate at sufferance will happen with court order. I will tell you this: an estate at sufferance does not have the permission of the landlord. Okay, does not have the permission of the landlord, and they're staying there. Again, how I remember it is the landlord is suffering. Okay, so that is the situation there. The landlord is suffering. So if you're in a situation like that, that's an estate at sufferance. Okay, so as far as a court order, typically they're going to take them to court to evict them. Now, they'll give you a lot of situations. So I told you I was going to give you a couple scenarios that people get tripped up with. They usually get tripped up with the estate at will and then the periodic estate. Okay, so what you really have to ask yourself is this. Remember, an estate at will has no time period. No time period. So so people ask me, Stu, are they paying rent? No, because if they're paying rent, then we've established a period of time. It's a periodic tenancy. Makes sense? Because bottom line is, if we know what they're paying rent for, we could quantify the period, and it's periodic. Okay? It goes from period to period to period to period. Okay? An estate at will, we do not have a period of time. There is no definitive time frame. And it is with the permission of the landlord. The landlord is fine with it. Okay, so there's no issue there. So people usually get tripped up with scenario-based questions with the estate at will and the periodic tenancy. But as far as what I want you to know for the test and for the leases, I really want you to understand how this positions right next to a freehold estate. So someone's going to own the property. They're going to have a freehold estate. And then what happens is they take from the bundle of rights, they transfer for a temporary period of time the right to possess and use it to someone who is going to hold the less than freehold or leasehold interest. Now, let me make one other comment. Any lease that is for 1 year or for more than 1 year, any lease that is for more than 1 year, okay, any lease that is for more than 1 year is going to be based on the statute of frauds, has to be in writing to be enforceable. So what does that mean? If you have a lease that's for, let's say, 18 months, in order for you to go to court to force someone to basically rent it to you, not to do something with it, that would be a situation where it would be said to be enforceable and has to be in writing. It must be in writing in order to be enforceable. Could you move forward with it if it's not in writing? Sure, but it has no legal, no legal effect. Meaning that you can't take it to court to enforce it. So it's something that if someone just wants to say, nah, I don't want to, then you really don't have a leg to stand on. Okay. So that's the situation there. So what I'm going to do is stop the recording now. So for everyone watching on recording, thank you so much for hanging with me and have a great one.